Hey guys, welcome to my very first tune playing tutorial. It is the month of December. We are coming up on Christmas, and so the tune we're working on today is the Christmas Eve Reel. Now, this is a, pardon me, a really fun reel in G major. It uses mostly the G pentatonic scale, or major pentatonic. G, A, B, D, E. So that's 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. It does have a passing C, so there is a fourth, but it's a very, very brief passing note. So a nice way to warm up for the tune is to take your instrument and play that scale all the way up and down the normal range that you would use for Irish music. So for me, it's from the low D all the way up to the high D. That's 2 octaves. For the fiddle, you want to start on the low G, etc. So it'll be different for everybody, but here we go. Up the pentatonic, the G major pentatonic. The notes are G, A, B, D, and E. So here we go. I'm starting on a D. I backed away because I didn't want to burst your eardrums with that high D. But yeah, practice that legato as much as possible, and then maybe try some skipping patterns. Right? Etc. Coming down is more common than going up, but it's nice to practice both. So anyway, now that you're acclimated, and feel free to do that a couple of times, pause the video, whatever. Now that you're acclimated, I'm going to go ahead and play the tune. Now, I'm not going to repeat each section and go through it very, very slowly. Rather, I want you to pause and rewind if you need to, because the main point of the video I'd like to focus on is what we're going to do with the tune. So, a couple of ornaments, variations. Actually, first we're going to work on rhythmic feel, then the ornaments and variations. So I will play the tune, though, for you slowly and try to do it plainly without any ornaments, just so you can hear the bare bones of the tune. It's a 3-part reel. It's in G. And each part starts on a pickup. So the first part is yappa-do, and the second part is going to be yappa-da, and then the last part is yappa-dee. All right? So, first part, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. All right. So that's a lot of different ways of mixing up the same 5 notes. It really is just D, E, G, A, and B. Doesn't even go higher than that. And yeah, it's kind of like, how many different orders can you play those 5 notes in? Well, turns out quite a few. Anyway, so that's the first part. Now I'll go on to the second part. So it's going to start yappa-da. It's going to start on that B. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. All right. Here we go. Pardon me. 1, 2, 3. I kind of fudged at the end there. It should have been from the high A to the D. A, G, E, D. I was thinking of a different part. So, di-a-ba-dee. Maybe you recognize that ending. That A, B, G, E, G. That was the same ending from the first part. Okay. Oh, and by the way, if this is, if you're kind of finding that you're already lost in the tune, not able to pick it up, just by all means pause, rewind, rewatch some sections, or go on the session.org, type in Christmas Eve, and you will find some wonderful transcriptions there. They might not be exactly what I'm playing, but I think that's fine. You want to learn multiple versions of the tune and then sort of average them together, and eventually you sort of come to an understanding of the core of the tune. The main skeletal points off of which all of the other variations are based. So don't worry if you end up learning a version that's slightly different from what I'm playing. It's fine. So anyway, third part. It's going to start yappa-dee. Oh, wrong key. Yappa-dee. Okay, here we go. So 4 and 1 like that. 1, 2, 3. Do you recognize the last 5 notes? Yappy yap and da. Classic little ending formula. 2, 3, 1, 6, 1. Same ending for all 3 parts. So once again, that was just kind of a really brief introduction to the tune. Feel free to go back or to go on the session.org. If I can scrounge up some sheet music of exactly what I played, I'll make that available to you as well, in case you're interested in that exact version. All right. So the first thing to talk about with this tune is getting the rhythmic feel down. So this is a reel. It's a dance tune, so it needs to have some lift. But before we can really focus on getting the lift in there, we have to make sure that the tune is perfectly locked in to that 8th note grid. So dappa 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 da. One thing that I like to do when I'm trying to make sure that I'm locked in, it's kind of funny. I actually imagine kind of a Latin beat, kind of like a bossa or something. Oh, like, here, check this out. So I've got my little spiral ring notebook. And then I get a pencil. Or, there we go. So I'll sort of imagine that kind of thing. The original instrument that I'm imitating is called a güiro, or a güira. So anyway, that's kind of like your classic straight 8th note groove. And then sort of it'll be kind of weird, but try to play the tune in that groove. 1, 2, 3. So I'm keeping that beat in my head. I'm actually sort of trying to move with it a little bit. And I'm trying to give the tune a couple of accents on some of the upbeats to make sure that I'm not rushing through the upbeats. That's some of the players that play the best, that have the best rhythm are often the ones that pay the most attention to the upbeats. What I mean by upbeats in this case would be 2 and 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? In that Latin beat, it was the little so that little high pitched sound that you would get. So if you give those their proper weight, then you're not going to speed through the tune. You're not going to rush through those notes. But if you only focus on downbeats, if you think of the rhythm as being down, 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 more of a heavy metal feel, then you're going to be a little more liable to rush. Well, I should say you really need to do both. So it needs to end up being a nice interplay. I sort of imagine a little dance. You could get some choreography going for that. So anyway, and be really, really strict and scrupulous and critical with yourself. Listen to your eighth notes. And if you hear any pair that's uneven, like da 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 da, you need to think about what physical aspect of playing my instrument is causing me to play those eighth notes unevenly. It might be that you're trying to do a difficult bow movement, or you took a rather luxurious breath, and then you have to catch up. Or it might be that one of your fingers is a little less responsive than the others, or maybe you're executing a difficult leap or skip. There's always a reason. Keep that in mind. When you're not playing in rhythm, there's always a reason. It's not that you don't have the rhythm in your head. The grid in your head is probably fine. Most of you have been playing music. You have a good rhythm in your head. Like, you can clap a beat. But it's the physical aspect of playing the instrument that sometimes presents difficulties to playing perfectly in rhythm. So, for example, a couple of the times where I wasn't perfectly in rhythm there was when sometimes I was trying to do a repeated note, like da-da, and I was doing that with a cut on the whistle. And my cut either was a little early or a little late, something like that. So the best policy to fix those kinds of errors is make sure you're completely relaxed on whatever instrument you're playing. I don't care if it's a bagpipe, a bouzouki, a banjo, whatever it is. Whatever ornament you're executing or articulation you're trying to do, or skip or leap or transition, you need to let that part of your body, finger, arm, whatever it is, let it be relaxed and limp as you execute that movement. And you can give it a little bit of adrenaline to make the motion quick, right? But then as soon as the motion's done, relax, right? So that has been a really important thing for me in getting my eighth notes perfectly in the grid. And I'm not actually perfect. A lot of times I'm very not happy with the way my eighth notes sound. But slow it down, listen critically, and think about what physically is preventing you from playing eighth notes perfectly in time. Now, let's pretend for the moment that our eighth notes are perfectly solid. And let's talk about giving the tune some lift. So to give the tune some lift, we're going to need to use some accents. In general, there are three kinds of accents, and this is for music as a whole, not just Irish music. The first kind, and the one you might not think of a lot, is called a tonic accent. Think of the word tone. And that just refers to a note that sort of pops out of the melody by virtue of being higher in pitch. So that kind of accent can be inherent to a melody. So, for example, you have a lot of Irish tunes that have tonic accents built in. Let's see, something like... those tunes that go... And that's really cool because a lot of times Irish tunes will have syncopation based on tonic accents and not necessarily based on dynamics or rests, or in other words, the syncopation of an Irish tune is not visible just from looking at the grid of eighth notes, because it'll just be a solid wall of eighth notes. But the syncopation comes from the pattern created by the tonic accents. So you might have the so your ear is picking up on those higher notes and sort of hearing the accents that pattern that produces, as in some cases a syncopation. So anyway, tonic accents are largely written into the tune. You can create them with a variation, right? But we'll get to that later. Second type, and probably the most obvious kind, would be a dynamic accent, where you're just giving it more volume. That's sort of the classic, dee ya da da ya ba dee ya da dee da da dee da. That's what we would think of, right? And the third kind is agogic. So an agogic accent is playing with the duration of the note. And that can be, if you're starting from a sort of staccato bed, then lengthening the note will give it a nice accent. So right? Da, 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 da. It's hard to do on the piano. How about, kind of sounds like Morse code, right? It's little shorts and longs. Now, if you're coming from a legato situation, then cutting the note off short or making it staccato will serve as an accent, an agogic accent. So, right? I'll try not to cheat, because I'll try not to actually play the note louder, because that verges into dynamic territory. So, right? Right? So you have that little breath. Irish music is going to use all three, but what you have control over primarily is going to be the dynamic and agogic. So how can you create an agogic accent in Irish music? Well, on the flutes and whistles, it's going to come primarily when you take a breath. Because when you take a breath, you're taking a quarter note, chopping it in half, putting in an eighth, so it becomes an eighth note and an eighth rest, and that effectively disrupts the flow, the legato flow. That is, basically that's the inherent flow of Irish music is going to be legato. And then if you put a breath in there, then you get a nice little a little breath, a little sort of cut, and that's going to sound like an agogic accent. And then, of course, the dynamic accent is... and then for the fiddles and such things, it might be a little bounce of the bow, a little lifting of the bow, right? Yep, ba-da-da-da-da. I don't play fiddle, but... And then for your picked instruments, you're going to have to mute the string somehow. You're going to have to stop the sound from ringing to get that accent. And then, of course, for the dynamic accent, that's the one everyone knows how to do. On here, it's just giving a little more breath. On the fiddle, it's going to be a little more bow weight, and so on and so forth. With the picked instrument, it's going to be a faster pick stroke. So let's first try putting some dynamic accents on 1 and 3. So this is going to sound very straight, very march-like, but this is going to be the first key component to developing your own style, is making sure that you know how to accent the downbeats. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Yup, dup, dup, dup. So it's every 4 eighth notes. These are what I'm going to call the downbeats, and then 2 and 4 are going to be the upbeats. So first we'll try 1 and 3, a dynamic accent. All right, so let's do the A section of the tune. So it's going to sound like this. Yappa-dee, yappa-da, yappa-dee, yappa-da-dee, yappa-yappy, yappa-do, yappa-dee, yappa-da-dee, yappa-do. Little groups of 4 with the first accented of each group. Let's slow it down. Yappa-do, yappa-dee, yappa-dee, yappa-da-dee. 1, 2, 3. I sort of fudged the notes there at the end a little bit. But anyway, so that's a very straight feel, a very march-like feel. You know, kind of reminds, if you play that a little faster, it'll actually remind you of Planxty. When you listen to their reels, they have a very downbeat heavy style. The Bowron is really just going, you know, so they would go, oh, that's the wrong tune. How does this tune go? Oh yeah. Right? Very a very cool style for sure. Now the next thing to practice is upbeats. So this is going to sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to feel a little more jazzy, a little modern, maybe a little bouncier. A lot of players around the scene definitely have this style for sure. This is a really classic sound. Now you definitely want to avoid doing it all the time on every single beat, but it's good to practice. So here we go. Let's try the second part of the tune. Right? That kind of has this sort of swelling, pulsing sensation when you do it on the upbeats, especially when you have a dotted quarter note or a half note on beat 1 or beat 3, because what that means is that beat 2 is actually inside that note, right? Hear how I have to pulse there? That's what gives it that characteristic pulsing sound. So, try the B section. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Right? Very nice. It's got some lift, got some energy. So practice those two. Honestly, practice those on every single tune you know. That would be a great policy. And then, ultimately, your style is going to be your own unique combination of upbeat accents and downbeat accents. So, let's try an example pattern. One that I like to do, just for practice, is 1 measure down, 1 measure up. So it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Kind of gets you in a nice little groove, you know. Almost like a reggae groove, you know. Something like that. Something like that. So anyway, let's try that. 2 downs, 2 ups, 2 downs, 2 ups. So it's 1, 3, 2, 4. 1, 3, 2, 4. Here we go. Let's maybe you guys aren't ready for the third section yet. Let's just go back to the first section. That one's pretty easy. Okay. So it's going to be here the 2 adjacent, the 4 to the 1, that's going to be adjacent. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. hard to do, isn't it? It's easy to just kind of lose track of where you are and start sort of going with just what feels right. But it's a really nice exercise to force yourself to do something that you wouldn't naturally do, right? Like eating kale, at least for me. Let's try that exercise on the third section as well. So first, let's slow it down. That was a little too fast. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. I lost my focus at the end there. I started doing a different pattern for a hot second there. It's very easy to lose your focus doing something like this. But again, it's really good exercise. So your individual style doesn't have to be the same as anyone else's. You can sort of feel out what you want to do in terms of these accents. But I'll tell you this, the more you listen to other players, the more you will start to build a vocabulary of different kinds of accent patterns. And by the way, it doesn't have to be that complex. So it doesn't have to be that reggae thing or the Latin thing, or you don't have to do a lot of syncopations. Irish, the beauty of the Irish tunes is often in the tonic accents that come from just the way the contour of the melody is. So you don't have to worry about creating a bunch of syncopation with your accents, but just do a little bit of variation between downs and ups, and that'll serve you really well. So I'll play through the whole tune just to give you an example of how I would do this with varying the accents up. Here we go. 1, 2. I put a couple variations in there as well. But so the differences between the ups and downs are subtle. You don't want to, knock people over the head with it. But it's just sometimes you get those da ya day ya da, and sometimes you get the dee up a dup deep do ja. Right? A nice variation of those. Okay, that's our rhythmic feel. Now let's talk about a couple of variations. First things first. The best way to get better at coming up with your own variations, both planned out and on the spot, is to really study the tune that you're looking at and sort of not only study the tune itself, but become familiar with a wide repertoire of sort of classic or stock phrases. Okay, and when I say phrase, it could be as little as 4 notes. So little clusters, little note clusters. And when I say classic, for instance, check out the ending of the parts. Right? Pretty simple, right? I mean, nothing to write home about. But it's a nice little shape to keep in mind. Ya-be-ya-da. Stays in the pentatonic scale, doesn't do anything too bizarre. It starts on the 2 and ends on the 1. That has a nice, you know, yada. That's a nice ending formula. Anything that has that as its skeletal points. So ya-be-da-doo. What's another one? How about ya-ba-doo-da? In that case, I went all the way down to the D, A, G, E, D, G. And hopping up from sol to do always has a nice sound, right? What if we went ya-ba-doo-ba-da with the little F sharp in there? That's a nice one. So we're building already right now in the last 30 seconds, we're building a repertoire of ending figures that go from A to G, right? File that away in your filing cabinet. So how about ABC, right? ABCBAG or ACBAG. How about ADBAG? That's a category of little phrases. So you build this vocabulary by studying tunes, listening really, really carefully, and just thinking about what you're playing in a bird's eye view, not just as a linear sequence of dots where if you miss one dot, then you don't know how to get to from point A to point B. The best analogy I have for that is imagine that every week you go to grandma's house. I guess you're in this scenario, you're Little Red Riding Hood or something. Anyway, so you memorize the path to grandma's house. You go out of the house, you turn left, you go past the old farm, whatever. You turn right, go up to the stop sign, then you go down to the old bushes, then you make a left, go through the woods, make a final right on the path, come out, and there you are at grandma's house. So you memorize that path, but unfortunately, in this case, you have no idea the terrain around you. You've never looked at a map. You have no knowledge of the other paths and other roads that lead to grandma's house. So you do not have an understanding of the whole area from a bird's eye view. Instead, you've only learned how to do this thing one way. And if you're obstructed at one point, you can't get to grandma's house. You got to go back home. So imagine one day you're walking along and the road's blocked. Well, because you don't know the terrain and you don't know another way to get there, you have to go back home. So with the tune, study the tune from a bird's eye view. Take a look at where are my skeletal points? How can I get there a different way, right? Either if in performance I mess up a note, right? That's, I take a wrong turn going to grandma's house. Do I get lost in the woods and get eaten by the big bad wolf? Or do I steer myself back on course because I know where north and south are, right? So almost every time I play a tune, you'll hear me do something that, frankly, I didn't mean to do, but I'm able to rectify it because I know where the path is and I steer myself back. I know I'm going from point A to point B. Sometimes it's literally from the note A to the note B. Let me see if I can give you an example. I'll try to mess up. Right? So I didn't plan any of that out. At each of those junctures, for the purposes of demonstration, I decided to veer off the path, and I did not know what I was going to do. But because I've studied these phrases and these combinations of notes for so long and so, intensely, I have this repertoire of ways that I can get back onto the path. So, I went up to that high G, and I sort of what I did was I was up here, and I kind of did a couple little boopum, boppum, zoopum, zoppum, until I heard myself getting back on the path, right? So, right? I'm just kind of playing with the notes in the scale, in a logical pattern based way until I felt myself descending back to the proper, B, A, G area where I needed to end the phrase. So there's two things. Number one, study the tune that you are working on. Learn the skeletal points of the tune so that you know how to go from point A to point B in more ways than just one. So if you get off the path, you can get back on. And then the second element is you have to build this vocabulary of stock phrases, sort of common turns, common combinations of notes that sound, stylistically Irish, in that sort of idiom, in order to, have a repertoire to use in order to get back on the path for any one tune. So, for instance, a little piece of repertoire you could gather from this tune would be that ending formula. And we talked about a couple of other options, so that was sort of a little category. What's another piece of repertoire? I'm looking at the tune here. How about a climbing figure like this? Right? That would be a great little piece, That's a little something to file away. Or how about in the third part? That's a little chordal figure. We're playing around with a G chord in that case. Our main note is G, and then we've got the upper and lower chord tones, the D and the B. And we're sort of centered around that G with repeating the G and then bipping and bopping up and down. That's the kind of thing you might practice. And then what happens is there's an upper reflection of that, almost like take it down here, whoop, flip it around that axis, do it up there. Of course, you're going to have to change the notes, right? It's not going to be the identical transposition. You're going to have to stay in the chord. So up the chord, right? Here we're on an E. That's the sixth in G, but it's part of that pentatonic collection, so it's going to be a very common note to sort of pair with G major. So you've got a 3-note collection on the top, the high G, the E, and the D, and then on the bottom you've got the 3-note collection of B, G, and D. So it's and then do you see the symmetry between those two? So things like that. And then, for example, I'll give you one more piece of repertoire, of vocabulary that I like to use. Whatever scale you're dealing with, for instance, in this case, it's pentatonic, you want to practice what's called a sawtooth pattern. So it's kind of like what we did earlier with the practicing the thirds. It goes like this. Right? So, and you can start it even higher up. What it is, it's this shape. Da-da, da-da. So up a step, down a skip. Up a step, down a skip. Up a step, down a skip. It's almost like a tongue twister, isn't it? That's a sawtooth pattern because it makes that shape, right? Sawtooth shape. So for instance, in this G pentatonic scale, try this starting up on a, I don't want to take you up too far. Let's start on the A. So we're going to go A, B, G, A, E, G, D, E, B, D, A, B, G, A, E, G, D, E. Wow, that was hard. Okay. That is a great little piece to work with for your variations. So, for instance, a lot of times Irish tunes will have a little bit of that written in. You might have a do-dee-ah-be-ah, boo-da-da-dee, something like that. Do-dee-ah-be-ah. One of those. But what you can do is a spot that is supposed to go ya-be-ah-ba-doo, where it goes up, down, down. You can think of those in pairs, right? So up, down, down. And instead, take that down and make it an up. So you're going to get a zigzag like this. Instead of da 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 da, instead of a straight up and straight down, you're going to go da di da di da. Right? That I was singing it in a weird key. Let's do it in G. For instance, if you were supposed to go G-A-G-E-D, what you do, you've got the G-A, and then instead of the G-E, you flip those. It's so simple. Sometimes any pair of notes, if you just flip them around, it sounds really cool. Check it out. Right? All of a sudden, I'm, Kevin Crawford or whatever. And then put a little passing tone in there. Sounds pretty cool, right? Let's take a look at where we could do that in this tune. All right, perfect example. Right here at the beginning. Let's see. Right there. We've got A, B, G, E, D. Let's try A, B, E, G, D. All right, so. That's a little tricky. That's too far of a leap. I don't like that one. Let's try a different one. Oh, here we go. Sorry, that took me so long. I'm not wearing my glasses. That's the problem. In the second part, check it out. Did you hear that? I got 3 of them in there. And it seems so impressive, but it's really quite easy because the pattern, what it does, it on the downbeats, you're actually doing steps. Steps in whatever scale you're in. So, dee, da, do, da. But then you add the upper neighbor of each one. Da, be, do, be, da, be, do, ba. So, for instance, if I have, if I'm supposed to be going, what am I doing here? I'm supposed to be going ya be da boo doo be da boo. So instead of going da da na 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 na, I'm gonna go da 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 da, right? Right? I imagine that's a bit harder on fiddle than it is on whistle, but it's just such a cool variation. So, sawtooth is your vocabulary for the month. Sawtooth pattern. Practice it in every pentatonic scale you've got. So, that's my low C sharp if I put the thing on my knee. It's close enough. Anyway, so sawtooth pattern. So before we go, I wanted to give you one more exercise, and this is going to be identifying the skeletal points of your tune. The most important, the non-negotiables of your tune are basically going to be the downbeats 1 and 3. The notes that land there are pretty set in stone. Next in the priority list would be the ones landing on 2 and 4. Those are pretty important. You don't want to mess with those unless you have a really good reason to. And then totally up for grabs are the ands and the beats, right? So, try this with me. We're only going to sing the notes that land on beat 1 and 3, and we're going to sort of think the other ones. So it'll sound like this. Down, 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 down. You can sort of do a little for the ones that are missing. All right? Try it. Here we go. We're going to sing. 1, 2, 3. Yep. Do, da, da, do, 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 ba, da, do, 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 da, ba. Right? You might found that a little bit challenging. And you definitely need to keep the tune going in your head, right? So you're singing the whole tune in your head, and you're just stopping yourself from physically sounding the intermediate notes. And then from that experience, you learn what those skeletal points are. So we have the basic contour of this tune is quite simple. It's really going from the D to the G, B, right? Chord tones of G major. Then an A, on the fourth beat of the phrase, you have a different note. So bum ba dee do 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 dee do. Kind of has a poetic balance to it when you just isolate those. So anyway, that's a great thing to practice. First try it singing, then try it playing, right? Then add in your 2s and 4s. So now it'll be dum ba da da dee da do do da da do do da dee da da do. 1, 2, 3, 4. I screwed it up. But anyway, you guys can work on that. So basically you want to learn the path the way it's written, or the way that you intend to travel it, very, very, very well, so that if you do happen to deviate from that path, as so often happens in live performance, you will know exactly how to get back on. So part of that is, no matter what variation you end up doing, just keep the tune going in your head, right? And that practice, or that skill, will come with practice. So if you don't have that skill right now, don't worry. Just do a lot of listening, do a lot of playing. Try things, right? Don't be afraid to try things. Try to learn from what you feel are mistakes. If you go off the path and you get lost, well, thankfully the big bad wolf is not actually real, and you can just go ahead and learn from that mistake. And who knows, maybe the mistake you made is a cool variation, and if you study it, you'll be able to use it in, an artistic way next time. So that's all I have for you this month. I hope you enjoyed learning and dissecting the Christmas Eve reel with me. If you have any questions, let me know. Please send me a message. And if you have something that you would like me to cover next month, let me know as well. In the meantime, have a Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year, and I'll see you in January. Thank you.